When and how did you understand that you were an artist?
I always run away from saying I am an artist. I always find it embarrassing. I don't know why. I suppose I thought it's up to the others to say we are or not an artist. And somehow I never found it important, interesting. I always said I do this or I do that. That was important. I mean, I always said I paint, I write. I never thought that was not interesting. I thought it is important to say I am a writer, I am a painter. I went that far. But the word artist, I don't know why. I have no answer. I found always a bit embarrassing.
Who was a painter that inspired you?
Yeah, well, it's good you said inspire and not influence, because we are influenced by many people even without realizing it. But painters that inspire me depends on the moments in my life. It started with Paul Klee. I think Paul Klee in the 60s, 1959, 60, when I started painting in California, in north of San Francisco, in the circles I was in. He was extremely important. There were people talked of Paul Klee. He was the example of the painter. Of course, abstract expressionists existed, but in the schools, in the universities, in the circles, Paul Klee was extremely important.
And for you too?
And for me too.
And today?
And then, oh, he still is. He still. Kandinsky came much after Paul Klee because of the Bauhaus, and also because there were the modern art in New York, and there were some amazing exhibits of Paul Klee and Kandinsky, parallel to the great, they were great abstract expressionists. So the American expressionists were my next passion. But in the same time, or a little after, very soon, I loved Nicolas de Staël.
Ah.
Very, very. I still, sometimes when I look at Nicolas de Staël, I kind of tremble. He does something to my mind. People say sometimes that my work resembles to it, and it doesn't at all. Nicolas de Staël works by layers, the couches, layers.
Oui.
And I don't. I have one color, one shape. I don't come back to it at all. That's a major difference already. And we don't have the same inner space. There is some inner space to works. So I wouldn't say, but I really love Nicolas de Staël.
What is success?
Well, you know, I became, if success is to be known. Now, is success the feeling that you at last did something worthwhile? That's one way to say I made it. If success is what people think, if many people think, if your name gets out of the private circle you live in, that's another way to look at success. I got a success when I was about 86, 87. So they asked me, how do you feel being successful? And I heard myself say, I am happy, didn't happen before, because I I was happy to do what I did with no pressure. It's not that I ran away from success, it just didn't happen. But I had enough shows, and I had enough few friends I respected that liked what I did to keep my self-image. It's important, I think, to be encouraged. I don't think that I like to be unknown and to suffer nonsense. I was happy to go along, and it's the same in writing. I never had big famous publishers. I still don't have them, but again, I had some feeling that I was with it.
Is nationality important?
I think nationality is becoming a mythology. As you said a few minutes ago, mondialization is real. If a person is not only a biological product, but it's also the product of its experience, of its head, then our head go in all directions. There is no more little cultures, protected cultures. Even in the deserts and in the high mountains, they have TVs and radios. So we are all a private synthesis of many things that we share with others.
And you are a good example of that, right?
I am certainly a pioneer almost of that. For example, I was one of the few children in Lebanon of a mixed marriage.
Like what?
My mother was Christian, my father was Muslim. My mother from Smyrna, my father was from Damascus. So it's already mixtures. My friends were little Russian girls because they were children of the emigres of World War I. This is when I was a child. So already I grew up. We were 3 people at home. We had 3 languages. My father and mother spoke Turkish together. She spoke Greek to me. At school, we spoke exclusively French. So imagine. And
you went to America?
And then I went to the US, but I was already older. But speaking even as a child, Beirut was a small town and was extremely mixed, although every group didn't mix with other groups. Mm. But still they were socializing. It's only they didn't marry much because every community was traditional, and they did. And this is every community. It's not one community that suffered more than the other. They didn't want the kids to get married, to keep the community solid, entre guillemets. So, but it was still cosmopolitan. In the same classroom, you had children from different languages and different religions.
But after, you kept on being cosmopolitan, right?
Yeah, it was already...
You went to America, after to France.
That's it. I came to Paris as a student at the Sorbonne. Then I went to Berkeley as a student, graduate student. It's funny, in every country, I suppose in every person, there is this need to have a strong identity. But your identity doesn't mean it doesn't share with other people and their notion of identity. But most people need the mythology, which I call the illusion, to be strongly different. And in the same time, when they are very strongly different, they also want to belong. So you have a very interesting tension.
What difference do you make between painting and poetry?
There is an obvious difference. Poetry deals with words and painting with colors and lines. But it is an important difference because words are social. When you use words, you think, you speak to someone, even if you don't realize that. Words, we share words with people. In painting, your tools are purely material. You have tubes, you have lines, you have ink. Mm-hmm. So you have the idea and maybe the illusion that you are more alone with your materials. They don't remind you of people. That's where the idea of abstract art has been possible. And they tried to do abstract poetry, it didn't work. So that's a major difference. Now, of course, basically, they can both be poetic. If
Elle est pas là, Madame Simone?
no.
J'ai demandé.
I always worked flat, maybe because I came from writing. My first education was a BA in French literature,
yes,
and then in philosophy. So I put a canvas on the table. For example, I will take this canvas, I will of course take the paper away, and I will put it here. And I always work with a palette knife. It's the tools you use, because with a palette knife, there are things you can do and things you cannot do.
And what can't you do?
Well, it makes you more do hard edges. With a brush, I do watercolors and inks, but with oils, I use a palette knife. Why? Well, that's how it started, and I kept it. So that's all. And I work. This is why I never did many big canvases.
But you have some here.
Pardon me?
You have some big here, some big canvases.
I do. I have very, very big ones, only 3 or 4. I have bigger than that, but they go on the table. It's a combination of the fact that I had back operation when I was a student. The doctor made a mistake. I had a rheumatism, and he took a disc. So ever since then, I had a second one to correct the first one. So I can't carry, and enfin. But there is another reason, maybe because I come from poetry. My first passion was for poetry.
And you write on the same desk?
I usually don't write, I write on the other desk.
Ah,
or
nice.
Now I write on the computer, but I always had a desk for writing and one for painting. Well, lately, in America, I had the same desk, but then I didn't do both. I don't do both in the same time, anyway. But now with the computer, I write emails and things. But it is the way I always worked is, in America, I didn't even have a room by itself. I was very tidy, obliged to work in the living room.
So, but how do you decide to write or to paint?
Pardon me. I don't know, it just comes. You know, it's le hasard. Chance has a lot to do with not only artists, as you said, but with every human being. Things happen that bring about other things. For example, somebody sends me questions, so I answer. Somebody says, we start a new magazine, write something. I wrote a novel, the only novel, because they assassinated a woman I knew in Lebanon. They financed kidnapped her and killed her. I was in Paris, I read it in Le Monde. So I sat down and wrote a book, a short book, and so on. You know, I come from a region which has so many problems, and also the Vietnam War. I became a poet in the anti-war movement. So, as I said, history writes my books, and that's not the case with art. Art is the other side of me, the happy side.
Merci.
Voilà.
What would you like people to remember about you?
I know. I am really thinking. If I disappear, it depends. If by that I mean, I think I have had a real love for life, the phenomenon of life. I was not an introvert person, although I think like everybody else. And I have followed tragedies in the Middle East, elsewhere, the atomic bomb. Those are things that stirred, bothered us a lot.
Yes.
But at the same time, I would like to tell people that to be alive, it's really a miracle, something very special.
Merci.
Voilà.